So in this chapter, we've been learning how we can do CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. We've done the first three, and now it's time to take a look at delete. And if you've mastered the others, this is going to be so incredibly easy for you. Delete is the easiest of all because we don't care about what values we get back. We just want to delete it from the database. So let's take a look at that now. I'm going to want to put a link that's right out here beside edit subject. It's just going to say delete subject, and it will delete it. And that's all it'll do. And we could do some fancier things that would make it delete all of its pages below it or object if it finds out that there are pages below it. But we're just going to go ahead and just delete it from the database as is. And we always know that we can come back in and add those fancier features later. So we're going to create a new page. And I'm going to go ahead and create one from scratch. I'm inside TextMate now. And I'll choose New. And I'm going to create a brand new page that's just going to be called delete subject.php. I'll save it in Widget Corp. And we know that we're going to need a few things for this. We're going to need our database connections that we've been working with. I'll go to create subject and grab those. Here we are, require once. And we'll also are going to need our MySQL close, because we're not going to have anything that we display. All we're going to do is connect to the database, tell it to do its delete command, and then redirect back to a page. And the deletes are pretty reliable. If the MySQL executes, then it will delete. So we can go ahead and put in the same kind of error checking that we had at the top of the last page. Let's see, that was edit subject. Let's go to the top. And we can do our same int val check that we did. So we'll put that in a PHP tag. So that'll check and make sure that we received a subject ID successfully. And once we get that value, then we know that we also want to skip down here and do this step where we actually are going to perform the delete. We wanted MySQL prep that value. So assuming that everything went okay, we don't need to do any form validation or anything like that. Check and make sure that the data is a certain length or anything. All we need is an ID. And then we'll have our query. And our query will be equal to delete from subjects where ID equals, and it'll be ID. And last of all, we're going to put in our limit 1. And remember we talked about that previously. We said we can drop that limit in there when we're doing a delete command. We also could have actually done it on our update command. That would have worked too. It's not necessary. It's just a little extra little bit that we're going to put in there. A little extra love. And last of all, then we have our result is equal to MySQL query on the query over the connection. And we know how to do that. Now, the way that we're going to test whether this result worked is just like we did with update. We'll have if MySQL affected rows is equal to 1, then we'll know that it worked. And if it worked, then we'll just redirect back to content.php. And they'll be able to see that it disappeared. Now, we could go ahead and develop something more sophisticated for messaging, but for now, this will be sufficient for our needs. And we'll say else. Then in this case, the deletion failed. Let's say deletion failed to remind ourselves. I think I misspelled deletion there. There we go. And let's just go ahead and echo back a real simple error message on this same page. Subject deletion failed. And why not go ahead and say what the MySQL error was. We'll do that inside some p tags. MySQL error. And last of all, let's go ahead and put a link back to our main page. So href equals content.php. And of course, we're going to need to escape these double quotes. Let's not forget to do that. And we'll have it say, return to main page. And we'll put that at the end. And that's all we need. That will allow us to be able to delete the page just by clicking on the delete_subject.php with a valid subject after it. There are a number of security measures we could add to this. For example, we could say if subject equals get subject by ID. Remember we wrote that earlier to use an ID to try and get the subject. So we can use that now and say if it comes back with something instead of false or null, then go ahead and execute this query. So that'll check and make sure that it actually exists in the database before it does anything. I'll just indent all of that so it'll match. Else, and then we say subject didn't exist in database. And we can redirect that back to content.php as well. So as you can see, we can keep adding features to this, but this will get the job done for us. So let's go ahead and save that page, and let's go back and create the link that we're going to need on the Edit Subject page. So I'm going to scroll down here to where the Submit button is. Here it is. And right after it, I'm just going to put in and in BSP and in BSP to put a couple of spaces, followed by the link. And we're going to link it to delete subject.php. And we'll say delete subject here. And that should work. So we've now got delete subject. This is going to point directly to this file. And we're going to need to pass it the subject value as well. subj equals, and then we know what we need to do now. We'll need to drop in a bit of PHP code here that will URL encode $SEL subject with the ID of subject, and semicolon and end the PHP. So that'll now do our URL encoding and it'll pass it right along. Let's go ahead and try that. Switch back to Firefox. I created something called whatever earlier. Let's get rid of that one. Delete. Whatever didn't disappear. How come? Whatever. Delete subject. Oh, it's not putting in my ID. And the reason why is an amateur mistake, hopefully you caught, which is that we did not echo back that URL encode. So there we are. That was the problem. Let's go back and reload it. And luckily, our code did not execute because we didn't have an ID. And there we go. Now whatever is gone. So that's all there is to deleting. It's really easy after we've learned how to do the other create, read, and update. As one final step before we leave this, let's go ahead and add ourselves a little bit of JavaScript here. I know you may not know JavaScript, but we can do a simple return confirm parentheses single quote, are you sure? And that'll just give us a JavaScript question, are we sure that we want to delete this subject? And the last thing we need after the JavaScript is a semicolon. So let's try that and see if that works for us. We go to Services, Delete Subject. It actually comes up and says, are you sure you want to delete it? And if we hit Cancel, then nothing happens. So that'll give us that little bit of extra security before we delete something inadvertently. With that, we've concluded create, read, update, and delete for all of our subjects. And we can now put in more subjects, edit what we've got there, and we have content management for all of the subjects. It's only the pages that still need create, read, update, and delete. Let's look at that next.